How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
My fellow Americans, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. I hope your turkey is thawing in the refrigerator if it's frozen. You better get it there today. And if it's a giant turkey, things going to be a little dicey for you. Get your turkeys thawing, please. 877-973-7425 is the phone number should you wish to be on the program. As always, text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, and you can get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast, everything you need to stay engaged with the program. We've got to talk about the growing congressional rebellion. When your side is in the majority of Congress and controls the White House, Democrats do this too. You oftentimes think that your members of Congress should just do the bidding of the president. Except that's not how our system is designed. Congress is a separate, independent branch of government. And you can posture, promote, bellyache, complain, and bully all you want. But if the president wants to get something through Congress, Congress gets a say. They don't have to do exactly what he wants to do. And for a time now, the Republicans in Congress have been doing what the president wanted. But the president, whether he is with you or not, is overall with the public increasingly unpopular. And he's unpopular in part because of cost of living and affordability issues. He is unpopular because his immediate advisors told him to do tariffs, which every economist on the left and right said would cause prices to go up. That's exactly what happened. And now he's shocked and doubling down on social media, insisting there's a foreign plot to influence the Supreme Court or some such to throw out the tariffs. I gather that he thinks that they're going to rule against him and he's trying to seed the ground with his supporters, but it doesn't matter at this point. The problem is members of Congress across the board, but on the Republican side I want to focus on, they're tired of the White House. Members of Congress who are Republicans are tired of being bullied by MAGA. Let's take Marjorie Taylor Greene for a moment. She's decided to get out of Congress. She's quitting early, won't even see out her term. She sees no future for her in Congress. She was already bored of being in Congress. It was obvious to everyone who knew her and was in her orbit that she was looking beyond Congress, and she's decided to go. The president took a punch at Taylor Greene, and she's a bully. She can punch, but she can't take a punch. She's willing to make claims about she can out deadlift you, and she's more fit than you, and she goes to CrossFit. But the moment someone above her weight punched her, she's like, I'm a victim. I'm a girl. How dare you hit me? I quit. She's a bully. The problem is a lot of MAGA has bullied members of Congress for some time, and those members of Congress can see the writing on the wall now. There was a glimmer of hope that they could hold off a Democratic wave in November. After the elections of this off year election, Republicans in Congress have decided they're doomed. And they don't want to put up with White House bullying and MAGA bullying if they're going to lose. Some of them are threatening to resign early. Jake Sherman runs Punchbowl News. Good guy. Let me read to you an excerpt from a senior House Republican. This entire White House team has treated all members like garbage, all of them. And Mike Johnson has let it happen because he wanted it to happen. This is the sentiment of nearly all appropriators, authorizers, hawks, doves, rank, file. The arrogance of this White House team is off-putting to members who are run roughshod and threatened. They don't even allow little wins like announcing small grants or even responding from agencies. Not even the high profile. The regular rank and file random members are more upset than ever. Members know they are going into the minority after the midterms. More explosive resignations are coming. It's a tinderbox. Morale has never been lower. Mike Johnson will be stripped of his gavel and they will lose the majority before the term is out. That's from a senior House Republican saying other members of the House Republicans beyond Marjorie Taylor Greene are ready to go. They are ready to sabotage President Trump's agenda because they're tired of being treated as if they're there to execute his will. And let me tell you something. Some of you listening to me right now believe that that's what they are there for. Their sole job is to execute the president's agenda. They're not. That's not the way our system was designed. And you are operating under a system that does not exist. And these members of Congress are fed up about it. And they are willing to sabotage your agenda solely because they're tired of being bullied all the time. Steve Bannon has likened Congress to the Duma, the Russian assembly, that's just ceremonial, that they're just to function. They're to give Vladimir Putin what he wants. Steve Bannon and others in MAGA have pushed the idea that that's what Congress is for. Congress is there just to give Donald Trump what he wants, except that's not Congress. Article 1 of the United States Constitution puts Congress ahead of the president. Congress is, if it chooses to be, more powerful than the president. And a lot of Republican members of Congress are willing to quit and allow the Democrats to be in charge because they are so fed up with the behavior of James Blair and others in the White House. You have never heard of James Blair. James Blair works in the White House. He is a political advisor, the deputy chief of staff of legislative affairs for the White House, and the members of Congress hate his guts. They also hate, what's the guy's name? Hang on a second. James Braid. James Braid worked for J.D. Vance. He understands Congress a little bit more, but James Braid is also a White House Office of Legislative Affairs, and they really don't like him either. They simply don't like Blair. They don't like the Jameses, Blair or Braid. They don't like the people who work with the Jameses. They don't like dealing with this White House. They don't like that when they call an agency and want answers, the agency treats them as if they're second-class citizens. They don't like the fact that they can't get this White House to give grants for little bitty things in little bitty towns across America that they can send out press releases for and get the credit. The president wants all of the credit and none of the blame. His staff expect Congress to bend over backwards to the president, and they're fed up. They think this White House has not mitigated problems but made them worse, and yet they won't stand up to the man. They won't stand up on tariffs. They won't stand up on this. Don't be mad at me for telling you what's going on. This isn't me because I hate Donald Trump or something like that. This is me explaining to you that members of Congress on the Republican side are furious with their treatment from the White House. They're furious with being told what they must do. And I saw someone earlier on social media say, well, Erickson, if they're that upset, why don't they legislate? That's part of the problem. Members of Congress on the Republican side want something called an open process. It's what they had. John Thune has brought back to the Senate, and they don't have it in the House. And they're mad at Mike Johnson for this. And they're mad at Mike Johnson because they believe Mike Johnson is doing this for the president. A closed process is what they have. A closed process is where the congressional leadership writes the legislation working with the White House and tells the members, pass it. And they're tired of that. What the Republican members want is what you and I know as how Congress is supposed to work. A member drafts legislation. It goes into the hopper. It's assigned to a committee. The committee vets it, marks it up. They debate it. They amend it. They send it to the floor of the House, and people vote on it. They send it to the Senate, where the process gets worked over again. That's what they want. That's what they're supposed to have. They don't have that right now. What they have is a system where leadership writes the legislation and then tells the House members, pass it or else. And they're tired of it. Marjorie Taylor Greene will retire from Congress in 42 days. Part of her message is that everybody's abandoning the president's priorities, and they're falling into complacency, and they're failing to do anything with their razor-thin majority. But it's hard to do anything with a razor-thin majority. And they're not allowing the collaborative process to go through because, in part, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene can object and, with a razor-thin majority, sabotage the legislation. That's part of the frustration here is Marjorie Taylor Greene says they're squandering the majority and not getting the president's agenda done. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, if she didn't get her way on something, she could object and kill the legislation because the majority is so narrow. So you've got that level of frustration in the U.S. House of Representatives. It's on the Senate side as well. So the Department of Defense, still calling itself the Department of War, which is a performance act because Congress hasn't changed its name, has said they're going to investigate Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly had been a senior member of the military before he retired and ran for Congress. And they're threatening to bring him up to active duty again and court-martialing him for a stupid performance video where he claimed that members of the military didn't have to obey unlawful orders, which he's actually technically right in that. Senate Republicans were unhappy with Mark Kelly for doing that, thought it was a bad idea, thought it was dumb, but they're furious with the Department of Defense today for threatening a U.S. senator. And here's what you have to understand. Whether you like it or not, just understand reality. That's all I'm asking. Don't be mad at me for explaining reality to you. The president is never going to be on the ballot again, and these people can be. They would like to hang on to their seats, and they don't believe the president's team is doing what must be done to save their seats. In fact, they think he's making it worse. They will stay, and he will go. And if he won't help them, they're willing to go to scuttle the whole thing. Because whether you like it or not, it's not a parliamentary process. The majority doesn't just do what the leader of the majority wants. They get to participate in the process. They're really tired of being bullied by people who claim to be MAGA and demand they do what the president wants when they don't believe in some of the things the president wants to do. The Republicans in Congress do not, for example, want to extend subsidies for Obamacare. The president is now concocting a plan with Democrats to extend Obamacare subsidies for 2 years. He's going to have to pressure Republicans who have long wanted to kill Obamacare to extend those subsidies at a time Republicans care deeply about the national debt and are doing nothing to cut the deficit, let alone the debt. And at the end of the day, the president has 3 years left. And at the end of the day, after the midterm elections, less than a year from now, if the Democrats take back the House of Representatives, it's game over for the president's entire agenda. And so these Republicans would love to get things done, but not in a my way or the highway situation. And they feel like they've been told my way or the highway so long, they're willing to take the highway out of Washington, D.C. So I will tell you, it may make you mad. You may hate these members of Congress, but you love your member of Congress. People hate Congress, but they always reelect their member of Congress. And it is your member of Congress who privately feels this way. And so if you're that upset, and if you are furious, you should tell the White House, play better with Congress. You should tell the White House, stop taking Congress for granted. It is a separate branch of government. It operates independently, and it wishes to be treated as such. And as much as you may not like that, That's reality. And you can't live anywhere except reality. And if you try, reality will be cruel. And that cruel reality is about to come as Hakeem Jeffries is on the verge of being Speaker of the House before the election even happens, because enough Republican House members are ready to quit because they're tired of the White House and MAGA bullies beating them over the head, demanding acquiescence oftentimes when they think something's a bad idea, and they're just about fed up with it. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric here. I got to tell you, there's a phenomenon. It always happens when I'm just explaining things to you. I'm not even really giving you my opinion. I'm just explaining this is what's happening and here is why it's happening. And people wish to yell at me that I'm wish casting or some such. I'm not. I can be realistic enough to separate myself from the conversations I have with members of Congress on a regular basis and explain to you what their thinking is. I'm not endorsing it. I'm just telling you so you're fully informed. I've got some guy from Tennessee yelling at me online that, do you really think this wouldn't fire up MAGA in the midterms? No, I think it would have depressed the heck out of the president's base if members of Congress who claim to be MAGA are so fed up with the president, they say, screw it, I quit. And then Hakeem Jeffries becomes speaker and ties the president down in a bunch of investigations. That's not going to fire up the base to save the president in the midterms when these members of Congress who quit would say, well, we're quitting because they mishandled the situation for the White House. It just, I mean, there's a lot of wish casting happening, but it's not on this end, folks. All I can do is tell you what's happening. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. It's a wild thing to see. What's wilder, however, is Candace Owens. That chick has lost her mind. She's now claiming a group of French assassins and a Jew are being hired to come to the United States to assassinate her. I don't know if she's planning on offing herself and seeding a conspiracy theory to make it more dramatic than it is, but this is a woman who needs serious intervention. But I do think she's doing it for money, just like the Nigerian scam artists on Twitter do it for money. I think she is doing it for money. And the Indians, the Indonesians, the Filipinos, the Nigerians, and Candace Owens all in it for the money. Seeding conspiracy theories. Let me tell you where reality exists. Hillsdale College teaches you about the real world, how it works and operates, and they do a great job of it. Go to ericforhillsdale.com today and sign up with Hillsdale College. You can take one of 40 different classes. They consist of 30-minute video lectures, depending on the class, depends on the number of them, but they give you actual facts. They give you truth and history. They give you background on C.S. Lewis or Shakespeare or the book of Genesis and the Bible, economics, chemistry, math. Surely there is a topic you're interested in. There are 40 of them at Hillsdale College. You go sign up at Eric, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. You pick the class you want. You take it with Hillsdale. You learn from one of their finest faculty members. You do it at your own pace. You never pay a penny. You get a certificate of completion. And it's great stuff. Eric, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. Sign up with Hillsdale College today. Improve your mind. Get smarter with Hillsdale College. Hello, America. It is Eric Erickson here, 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, delighted to have you with me. Let me go to the phones. Hakeem, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. Hey, how you doing?
Great. What's going on?
We just been through 4 years of the Democrats caught whatever the president say, took everything they said and shoved it down the Republican throat. Now the Republicans seem to get a little bit bullied and they want to just run. They can't just stand back up and just say this is what we want and push some agendas through. But I don't see this as being a win for nobody to begin to run and leave and sabotage, because once Hakeem Jeffries gets the gavel and the Democrats get back in power, it is over with.
Yep, you're absolutely right. I don't disagree with you at all. But I mean, that's how strange the relationships are with the House and Senate and the White House right now. And if anything, what the White House should do is process what they're hearing and respond to mitigate the situation. These guys They recognize they're probably going to lose. And why go through a nasty campaign, have their families go through a nasty campaign, do all the fundraising and lose when they could leave early and they're not going to be bullied by the White House anymore? That's not making their lives easy and doesn't seem like they really want to win in November. That's their point, is this should be a wake-up call for the White House, is engage. Democrats always think Republicans are way more unified than the Democrats. Republicans always think the Democrats are way more unified than the Republicans. I tend to think that Democrats are a herd of socialists, and socialists are all about the collective, and they get together and they collectivize. Republicans are more individual. It's, I think, what actually makes the Republicans stronger, but also harder for them to do big things in Congress, which most Republicans ideologically don't want to do big things in Congress. They want to restrain Congress. They want to restrain Washington. I just gotta say, I just think that the White House needs to process this information, and if their reaction is to go beat up the members of Congress and beat them into submission instead of throwing them some bones and doing a carrot approach instead of a stick approach, they're going to lose a lot. I have a sneaking suspicion a lot of these guys aren't actually going to step aside early. But I do think a number of these guys won't run for re-election, and that could cost the Republicans. Some of these guys who could win will just decide it's not worth it. It's not worth dealing with another 2 years of this administration if they're not going to change. And by the way, if you're in the minority, you're on defense, and you're defending a lot of stuff you privately don't agree with. Why would you want to do that? So the Republicans are going to have to figure out, particularly in the White House, how they navigate this. And on top of that, they've got the other crazy fight they're dealing with. The New York Times has a story out. If you got my show notes, you text the word Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. You get my show notes. And my morning piece, I linked to this New York Times story. Why Republicans are fighting about the Nazis. Tensions over right-wing anti-Semitism have burst to the forefront of Republican politics and show signs of becoming a fierce point of contention in the midterms and beyond. For years, Jewish Republicans often denied that the right had a serious problem with anti-Semitism, pointing instead to anti-Jewish bigotry on the left and celebrating President Trump's support for Israel. But now that problem is staring them directly in the face. Tensions over anti-Semitism in the party, free speech, and Israel have burst to the forefront of Republican politics and show signs of becoming a fierce point of contention in 2026 primary races and beyond. The furor has reached the highest levels of government, with President Trump this past week defending Tucker Carlson for conducting a friendly interview with white nationalist Nick Fuentes, who expressed admiration for Hitler and Stalin. Some Republicans are now finding themselves in the extraordinary position of clarifying what long seemed obvious: Nazis are evil. It's something that we all should know, but the fact of the matter is it has to be said Representative Dave Kustoff of Tennessee, explaining why he felt the need to denounce Nazis and anti-Semitism at a recent gathering of the Republican Jewish Coalition. He was joined there by Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who declared, "I'm in the Hitler sucks wing of the Republican Party." And even Laura Loomer, the far-right activist who is Jewish, has argued on social media that the GOP has a Nazi problem. As the fallout from Mr. Carlson's interview has consumed the right, some Republicans, including Speaker Mike Johnson, have condemned the amplification of anti-Semitic views. And to Jewish Republicans like Mr. Kustoff, Mr. Trump's strong military support for Israel has cemented their backing, regardless of how he approaches people like Fuentes and Carlson. Mr. Trump has also pushed far-reaching campus crackdowns in the name of combating anti-Semitism, an approach some conservative Jews have welcomed. Republicans have aggressively courted Jewish voters alienated by the left and appeared to make some gains in the 2024 election. But there's a growing divide in the party over American support for Israel and how to address anti-Semitism. The key paragraph, and by the way, this goes on for a while, The key paragraph is this: Republicans have aggressively courted Jewish voters alienated by the left. You see, what the Times doesn't really bring up in this piece is that the right is having this conversation. The Republican Party is responding to the incursion of the anti-Semitic virus into its political bloodstream. The antibodies of the right are fired up. On the left has succumbed to the virus. There is no story about the fight against Nazis and anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party and on the political left because they've embraced anti-Semitism. They have embraced it. They can point to being all funded by George Soros to say we're not anti-Semitic while they're funding anti-Semitism around the country on college campuses and abroad. In Congress, the Democratic Party has become increasingly hostile to Israel. In Congress, the loudest voices are all anti-Israel, whether it's Bernie Sanders or AOC or Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar. They're all deeply, deeply antagonistic towards Israel. They have a couple of token Jewish members of Congress like Chuck Schumer and others who dance around the issue, but they attack him regularly. They're probably going to primary Chuck Schumer if he tries to run again. The left has succumbed to anti-Semitism and the right is responding to the virus. Ted Cruz has become one of the most outspoken members of the United States Senate on this particular issue. Ted Cruz has been pushing back aggressively on it. Lindsey Graham has pushed back aggressively on it. Tom Cotton has pushed back aggressively on it. Time and time again, prominent voices on the right in and out of Congress are pushing back on anti-Semitism. Candace Owens has a traction online, following online, but it's mostly a clown show of followers. I think most of the people who pay attention to Candace Owens are actually watching her political self-immolation happen. It's just bizarre to watch her rant about the Jews all the time and tie everything to the Jews. Meanwhile, more and more people on the right are willing to speak up about it, and that's a good thing. And again, the New York Times has nothing about the left fighting anti-Semitism. The New York Times can run no story entitled "Why the Left Are Fighting About the Nazis." They can't do a story on why the left is standing against anti-Semitism because it's not. It's actually encouraging to me to see the right stand up and fight back against voices that are coming in, many of them from the left, trying to, in some capacity, make it about anti-Semitism and defending anti-Semitism. It's wrong, and I am really encouraged by so many unified voices on the right stamping it out, putting it back on the ash heap of history. So many ideas are having to be revisited from the ash heap of history these days. This one definitely needs to be placed back on the ash heap of history. Now, I need to apologize to Charlie because as I talk about this, I got to pivot to another idea that needs to be put back on the ash heap of history. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a cabinet secretary who has more likely than not paid for more abortions than all cabinet secretaries in American history combined, who is super pro-abortion, but because he's embraced hippie faith healing, has a part of the Christian right that has embraced him, has ordered the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to change what it says about the links between vaccines and autism. There are no good links between vaccines and autism. There was one study that itself was debunked, and the man who pushed it was debunked. And I can't tell you the number of people who insist that it is so. There are doctors in America who will tell you that transgenderism is real in the same way there are doctors who will tell you vaccines cause autism. It doesn't make any of them right. A lady this morning, as I pointed this out on my Substack piece, says, I don't know why anyone thinks science is settled. Science is never settled. Are we going to keep debating gravity? Are any one of you about to float off into outer space, or can we say that gravity is settled science? Can we say gravity is settled science or not? What goes up must come down. Isn't that so? Is it not so? Things at rest tend to stay at rest until the force is applied to them. Do we have to debate inertia? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a charlatan, a huckster, and a fraud who has for years blamed humanity for Earth's destruction. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is engaged in what appears to be a very successful charlatan campaign to convince humanity to extinguish itself through the embrace of pseudoscience. And I want to be very clear to you. And by the way, you're not getting on the program if you want to discuss this issue, because the people who have become deeply anti-vaccine are actually been misled and are pretty ignorant and in a cult, and I have no use for them nor for their phone calls. And if that offends you, I'm sorry, but I'm telling you the truth, and it's a truth you don't like to hear about. You decide not to give your kids vaccines, you put your kids and everyone else at risk. And you have the luxury of not giving your children vaccines because this country is so highly vaccinated until the moment it's not. And we have apparently, as a society, decided to cross this Rubicon, being led by a huckster and a fraud who actually thinks there are too many people and we need to reduce the population anyway. And he's hit on a novel idea of embracing particularly the gullible essential oil crowd to advance his ideas. And a lot of people are going to be harmed. Are there questions about vaccines? Yes, there are questions about vaccines. Are there parents who have concerns about loading the number of vaccines they're loading into kids at one time? Yes. But there have been lots of studies, including from those who believe there might be a relationship between autism and vaccines, and they've all come away saying, no, there's not. That autism symptoms tend to present around the time of certain vaccines being given, but that you can't actually correlate the two. There's not a causation issue. There's a correlation issue, and the correlation issue is not enough to say that the one causes the other. But my God, you tell this, and there's a particular type of granola Christian mom who gets absolutely infuriated by it. I know more and more people who have stopped giving their kids vaccines because of people like Robert Kennedy. It is deeply destructive to the health of your children and to this country. And you can hold your head high and claim that you have protected your child until your child gets very, very sick. And when more and more children get very, very sick and are left with scars from measles and the like, maybe we will reawaken to the idea that there are things that we don't have to deal with and worry about as a nation because we took preventative measures in the forms of vaccines. It's really easy for so many people to say, I'm not going to give my kid a vaccine because there are so many vaccinated kids. And it's really, really easy for people to say vaccines are bad and I don't get it and I don't understand the science, even though I'm not a medical doctor. I read online. And they have the luxury of the belief because they've never had to deal with the fallout. The nation for a very long time has been well vaccinated. And when we're not, well, then you'll understand that the people who advocated the vaccines for your children weren't the bad guys. Let the listener understand. Ladies and gentlemen, rarely does my call screener pull a Bo Snerdley where I can hear him and you cannot hear him. But I must tell you that my call screener tells me that the anti-vaxxers have not only called, two of them actually wish to debate my point on gravity. Yes. Yes. No, what's that? Did they really? No. No, really. Apparently, one of the points of one of the callers is because we can't actually completely explain how gravity works. We cannot say it's settled science. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I don't exactly know how my iPhone works, but it's pretty settled science that when I put it in my hand and it's powered up, I can turn it on and use it. It is pretty, no, seriously, he did, really. Yeah, apparently that was the point. Yes. The gentleman believes that because I cannot actually articulate how gravity works, I cannot say it's settled science that we have gravity. This man must probably smoke a pipe and float away, or at least he believes he floats away. I am gobsmacked by this. Wait. No. No, really. Oh, my God. Okay, no. Okay. Apparently, the other caller said because people on the moon can jump higher than people on the earth, we cannot actually say that gravity is consistent. Therefore, there might actually be something we don't understand. Therefore, we cannot extrapolate that gravity is settled science because it operates differently on the moon than it does on planet Earth. No, are you? No, you're not making that. You're for you. Wow. So we got one guy who called and said that because we can't explain it, we can't say gravity is settled science. And another guy who called and said because you can jump higher on the moon than you can on planet Earth. And I'm surprised this guy even believes we landed on the moon. I bet you he doesn't actually, but this is his example. And he says because we can jump higher on the moon than we can on Earth, we can't say that gravity is consistent. Yes, we actually can because of the mass difference between the Earth and the moon. You idiot. I hope you're still listening so you know I believe you're an idiot, a dim-witted idiot who should go back to school. My gosh, this is what happens, Mr. Call Screener. I thank you very much for your time and diligence in this matter and apologize for putting you through that. Let's talk about Swiss America, people, because Swiss America would like to help you understand the secret war on cash. The secret war on cash is the government insisting you use plastic instead of cash or even crypto so that you can't anonymize your purchases. If you call or text Swiss America, my name, Eric, to 800-289-2646, they'll get you the Secret War on Cash report completely free. 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646, or go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK. Let Swiss America help you. Message and data rates may apply.